Okay, so let's start. Today, we'll be talking about nutrition and diet. And the topics that we are going to cover is about how we obtain energy from food and how living organisms use that energy. We're going to talk about different types of nutrients and also the digestive system that helps us to break down that food into different particles, and we will also cover some enzymes, which are the key players in breaking down proteins, fats, carbohydrates. And we are going to finalize it with some diseases that result from eating disorders. And perhaps you already have noticed that in the US, people have a high rate of eating disorders as being really overweight and obese, either obese or anorexic. So we will cover all these eating habits by the end of our lecture. So it's going to be quite uh, like complex in terms of it covers many different topics. So in case you think that you're lagging behind, just feel free to stop me, okay? So that we can discuss it. So we expect from you that you get the understanding of why we use food and what kind of food are needed to complement the needs of our body, be it vitamins, minerals, or bulk chemicals like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, or other type of macronutrients. So yes, we need food, and we spend so much time in our life to prepare food, to purchase it, to so like sometimes it's our life is evolving around the food, right? Why? It's all because we need it to sustain our life, to maintain all the functions that our body needs to fulfill. And while consuming the food, so what we are getting from it is that we have the nutrients, the right nutrients that give us vitamins, minerals, even water, fat, carbohydrate, and protein. So as you can see, the list is long and it contains all the necessary substances that your body needs in order to synthesize the hormones, vitamins, and to give us the energy so that we can exercise, walk, speak. Yeah, so it affects all aspects of our life. Therefore, we really devote so much time on the food that we eat. So in the ecosystem, we have different players who are who can be either producers or consumers. So when we talk about producers, these are the organisms who make their own food. So the first thing that you need to remember about producers, that they are plants. So plants can photosynthesize. It means that they can use the sunlight and they can use it as an energy to produce carbohydrates that they will be using for their own survival. And in the process of carbohydrates, so what we have is that uh, the use of light and the water that the plant gets once you water the plant, and the carbon dioxide that we give for the plant, what we have is that photosynthesis with the help of sun energy results in the production of sugars, that is carbohydrates, and oxygen. Yeah, so that's the reason why we keep plants in our offices, in our rooms, is that we always have uh, the O2 production, which is really good for our respiration. And plants are really nice, and they are not very demanding. Yeah, so that you just need to water them for the photosynthesis to be carried on. So plants are producers, and we have consumers, which are the animals who eat the plants. So consumers, it means that they do not produce their own food. They need to take their food from outside. So we humans as well, we are consumers. So what happens is that in the ecosystem is that the sunlight gives energy for the plant to make its own food, and the plant is getting it by the animals, yeah, which is the plant eating animal, and this plant eating animal gets consumed by the flesh eating animal, and then this flesh eating animal is consumed by other flesh eating animal. So this is the sequence of reactions where matter and energy is transferred from producer and to consumer. And in the ecosystem, we also have this predator chain that involves a predator and prey. Predator is an animal who eats other animals. So in that case, it's a snake which eats mouse. And a mouse will be a prey. It's an animal that is eaten by the predator. Okay. Or it can be, the predator can be hawk and prey can be snake. So it depends which segment of the food chain you are looking at. So therefore, what happens in this food chain, it's very highly regulated, and we are transferring the energy, yeah, from the sunlight, and also once the mouse eats the plants, because the plants are sit in the soil, and soil has many nutrients, yeah, in the form of minerals, in the form of different salts, and the mouse gets all the minerals by eating the grass. Because in the roots of the grass you have many of these nutrients, and these minerals and nutrients that was gotten from the grass will be in the mouse digestive system, yeah, and then the mouse will convert all those nutrients to snake once the snake eats mouse. So as you can see, it's a very well thought and really useful chain where we transfer the energy, the nutrients from one type of species to another. And in case you are a human eating hawk, yeah, so you will get all the minerals and vitamins that was already being passed from this way to that. And another very important point is that while you are eating food is that you have the energy after eating food, especially after eating carbohydrates, yeah, in the form of bread, chocolate, and so on. So this energy is given in a molecule called adenosine triphosphate. If you remember, when we covered the lecture with cell organelles, we talked about mitochondria. And we said that mitochondria is a powerhouse of the cell because we have adenosine triphosphate, yeah, ATP, generated in mitochondria. So this ATP is found in all the living cells, and all the living cells have mitochondria as a membrane-bound organelle, where we have this ATP production, and it fuels the cell to give the energy and to allow the cell to fulfill its various functions that it carries out every second while you breathe, while you talk. It's a very dynamic process going on. So just remember that ATP, it's a currency for energy, and we obtain it from foods, and chemical energy is really highly stored in fats and carbohydrates. Yes, so carbohydrates is sugar, so everything that contains carbon and hydrogen atoms. So also this ATP is needed for cellular metabolism, and you know this already works. So metabolism, it's a complete sequence of chemical processes that take place in the cell. And what happens during these chemical processes is that we break down the organic matter, and we use the those which are resulted from this breakdown, those small substances, we again take them for construction new components of the cells, be it like cell membrane, yeah. So like if you take carbohydrates or proteins, once they are broken down, they are not considered as waste. So they will not got out of your body as waste. No, they will be broken down, and then we know which substances need to be taken and absorbed by our body so that we can construct and use them as monomers to construct different cell particles. Okay. So how it looks like, ATP, it's a molecule. It's actually nucleotide that contains sugar. It's a ribose sugar, and it contains this nitrogenous base, adenine. It's a purine, and you know that adenine is also, we have them in a DNA molecule. Yeah, it's a nitrogenous base. And then it has phosphate groups, 3 phosphate groups, and this is the name, like triphosphate. That means that it has 3 phosphate groups, and these phosphate groups actually are key players for allowing this molecule to act as an energy molecule, because they have these high energy bonds. I think I have a question here. So this, what happens is that once the third phosphate, yeah, which is the outer phosphate, will get released, we have generation of high yield of energy. And how you end up with is that, let's say that you started with ATP, yeah, containing 3 phosphates, and when the outer phosphate is released, like when the chemical bond here is broken down, yeah, what you get ADP, which is adenine diphosphate. Diphosphate, it means it has 2 phosphate groups. So this is the case when you generate energy. When ATP is on its own, containing 3-phosphate, nothing happens, yeah, no energy. However, when it gets broken to ADP, you have the energy yield. So food, once it's consumed, we use mainly food for generation of ATP molecules. And how we get this ATP, there are 3 different processes involved in the cell cytoplasm and in the mitochondria that generate these ATP molecules. So it's called cellular respiration. It means that once energy is derived from food, and once it's converted to ATP, we call it respiration. Yeah, so every living organism, they respire because they consume the food, they grow in it, and then they use this energy in the form of ATP to sustain their continued life. So there are 3 processes for ATP generation or for cellular respiration. Those are glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and electron transport chain. So glycolysis is when you start with the breakdown of glucose. We know that glucose, it's a carbohydrate, yeah? When you break down glucose into pyruvic acid, you have the generation of 2 molecules of ATP, and this glycolysis occurs in the cell cytoplasm. And here you have the mitochondria, which is the membrane-bound organelle. And in the mitochondria, you have the Krebs cycle going on and electron transport chain going on. The Krebs cycle occurs when glucose is broken down to pyruvic acids, and then it continues in the mitochondria by the generation of this acetyl-CoA, yeah, and then you have different. It enters into the citric acid cycle where it generates 2 ATP. So you had 2 ATP in the cell cytoplasm. In the mitochondria, again, you generated 2 ATP from the Krebs cycle. And the electron transport chain is all about these electron carriers in the form of NADH and FADH. These are the electron carriers. They carry the electron to oxygen. And this is electron transport. And in the end of the electron transport, you generate 34 ATP molecules. So once you add up 2 ATP from the cell cytoplasm, 2 ATP from the Krebs cycle, and 34 ATP from the electron transport chain, you end up with 38 ATP molecule per 1 molecule of glucose. Okay? Is this clear? Thank you. Okay. So we are finished with the energy production and the ATP molecule discussion. Now we move on to nutrition and nutrients. So nutrition is now becoming really, really important in medical sciences, because now we understand that every disease that people have, yeah, the fundamental basis for it is what type of food we consume, what is our lifestyle, is it healthy diet, or we have some different eating disorders. So everything that we consume can be clearly seen on different blood analysis that you take. Yes, so even these cholesterol levels, bad cholesterol or good cholesterol, they are all the consequence of having of consuming good fat and bad fats that we'll also discuss today. So nutrition is a science where we study about what kind of foods the person takes. Yeah, so it's a study about how this food can be absorbed and can be broken down into the digestive tract of human. And also it's all about how different living organisms assimilate food and how the food afterwards can be used for the following process like growth and also the renewal of tissues and cells. And food itself, it's a substance which contains very important macromolecules, micromolecules, and also carbohydrate, lipid, or proteins that we call it organic matter, yeah, in order to allow us to harness energy and to provide our growth. And digestion that happens in the stomach, in the lower or upper digestive tract. It's all about absorption of food and how it's then further utilized by the body. Nutrients, it comes from the breakdown of the food. So food contains nutrients, yeah? And these nutrients are really important for us, and as they are required for the cell growth, cell maintenance, and cell repair. We can divide them into different groups, into essential and non-essential nutrients. So our body, for the majority part, it synthesizes all the nutrients it needs. So like lipids, it can synthesize, the proteins can synthesize, yeah, but some other types of, for instance, amino acids we need to take from outside, from food or from food supplements. Also, like for lipids, our body synthesizes majority of the lipids that it needs, because we know that the cell membrane is made of phospholipid bilayer, and we need the lipid on a very frequently basis, right? However, it cannot synthesize omega-3 and omega-6. So therefore, you need to either take it from fish, olive oil, or from the food supplements which are that you can find in the pharmacy. And also nutrients can be divided into macronutrients and micronutrients. So as the name suggests, macro, it means like large substances in the form of carbohydrates and proteins, whereas micronutrients, it's small substances, yeah, like they can be either vitamins, minerals, and trace minerals. We have already covered trace minerals in our first lecture, and you know that we need them in a very, very tiny amount, and you can get them, for instance, selenium trace mineral you can get by eating Brazil nuts, and the selenium is really important for sustaining very important cellular functions as well. So these are all. Regarding the kilocalories, it's a unit to measure after the consuming lipid, for instance, how much energy is released. Yeah, so this is the unit for it. So it can be either kilocalories or just calories. So lipids generate 9 calories per gram. This is the highest, whereas carbs and proteins generate 4 calories per gram. So therefore, every time when you see the food package, you can read how much calorie it generates after being consumed. And here is a very quick table regarding the nutrients that sustain our human life. So you have 51 of them. 3 of them it's regarding the oxygen, water, and carbohydrates. 9 it's about the amino acids, and lipids. Yeah, these are the two that we need to take from outside, and this is a protein that they are called essential because we have to take them from outside. So we need to derive them from food supplements or from foods, and these are the names: histidine, isoleucine, lysine, and so on. And you know we have how many amino acids? How many amino
20?
acids do we have?
21?
20. 20. Yeah, you are close. Yeah, we have 20 amino acids. From there, we synthesize, our body synthesize 11 of them, and 9 amino acids we have to take from outside. So you don't have to remember all these 51. This is just for you to give a notion. Once you buy food, yeah, from the supermarket, that you can read like, okay, if it contains omega-3, it's good for my health. If like all these things that you need to, for your own health benefit, you need to know. So what we expect from you in the quiz, for instance, that you do not tell that linolenic acid is like, I don't know, vitamin, for instance, yeah? So you should be really able to distinguish between the vitamins, between the trace elements and lipids and so on. So macro minerals, we have them also in multivitamins. If you take them daily, they are all included in your vitamin pills. And trace elements, that they are really, really important, because even they are present in very tiny amount, they are like a super stuff that accelerate the reaction, and they are really good for us. Like vitamins, we will cover it in future slides soon. This is just to let you know that we have water-soluble vitamins and fat-soluble vitamins. So water-soluble, it's a huge group of B vitamins. As you can see, they have these names like thiamine, riboflavin. Yeah. So if you just see the B1, B2, B3, just you know that all belong to these water-soluble vitamins, whereas D, it's a vitamin D that you take from sunlight. Yeah, it's a fat soluble. And we also last lecture we talked about vitamin A, that is whose precursor is beta carotene. Yeah, and we need it to have a good vision, and therefore we had this golden rice developed. Yeah, if you remember. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that you already know about these carbohydrates because we talked about biomolecules in previous lectures. This is just to give a quick revision. Yeah, so carbohydrates, it's a major source of energy for all living organisms, and you can really you take them daily by eating bread, pasta, soybeans, rice, and all the whole grains. Yeah, when you eat porridge for your breakfast, yeah, these are the good source for your carbohydrates, and they can be either complex or simple. So complex, all those like bread, and simple is like sugars in milk for lactose, and fructose, sugar in fruits when you consume fruits. And it's a good source for dietary fiber as well, cellulose. Yeah, we also need it, and also liver can store the carbohydrate, the energy in the form of glycogen. So glycogen is released once we need more energy to back up. Regarding proteins, it's again a very quick slide. As hemoglobin, it's an iron containing protein, yeah, that we also needed to have because it transports iron to the tissues. So when there is a lower amount of iron in your lower amount of hemoglobin in your let's say when you give your blood for tests, if you have very low hemoglobin, it means that there is a probability that there will be like iron deficiency anemia. So also, yeah, 20 amino acids, yeah, as we have also told them that they are called can be divided into essential and non-essential. And for those which are 9 that needs to come from food, you can be sure that if you consume broccoli, all those walnuts, almonds, eggs, yeah, for your morning, cheese, and you will get those amino acids. For the lipids, it's also another source of major source for energy, and it's really needed to make hormones, and also needed to make the lipid bilayer of our cells. Yeah, so every cell it has this lipid bilayer. For that, we need these fats. And you can also take it from avocado, from olive oil. These are very healthy sources for lipids. So now let's talk about this cholesterol. So our cells, they can synthesize cholesterol. And cholesterol is actually needed. It's a waxy lipid that is present in our cells. So, however, we have two types of this cholesterol. It's LDL for low density lipoprotein and HDL for high density lipoprotein. And if you remember, we covered these saturated fatty acids, yeah, when they have these single bonds between the carbon atoms, and we have these unsaturated fats, which have double bonds between the two carbon atoms. So these saturated fats, they are the source for having bad cholesterol, like LDLs. And this is really bad because these saturated fats, if they are consumed in a huge quantity, they will deposit, they will get solid, yeah, and they will form these plaques, and they will be deposited on the walls where the blood is flowing, yeah, and it increases the risk for coronary heart diseases, for cardiovascular diseases, and for obesity, diabetes as well. Whereas unsaturated fats, that is whose source is avocado, fish, olive oil, yeah, they decrease this bad cholesterol and increase good cholesterol. HDL is good cholesterol. How? Because it removes this bad cholesterol, and then the remaining it takes to the liver. So this way you won't have this deposition of plaques in your cells. And yes, essential fatty acids that we need from food supplements, it's omega-6 fatty acids and omega-3 fatty acids. Why it's called 6 and 3, we also covered, but just to remind you. So this is omega-3 if the carbon atoms are double bonded on the third, starting from the third carbon atom, then we call it omega-3. So another name is linoleic fatty acids. For the omega-6, it has the carbon atom starting from the 6, which is double bonded to another neighboring carbon atom. Then it's called omega-6, and its name is linoleic acid. And you have these food sources to make sure that you really consume it. Also, regarding the structure of unsaturated fatty acids, we talked about trans and cis, yeah? So trans unsaturated fatty acid, it means that it has its hydrogen atoms sitting on different sides of the carbon, whereas in cis unsaturated fatty acids, you have this hydrogen atom bonded to the carbon atoms on the same side. Yeah, if you remember. And today we're going to talk about trans fats. So trans here is about the location of hydrogen atoms, but when we talk about trans fats, it's about the industrial application of these trans fats that is actually being synthesized. So what industry and does is that they artificially hydrogenate the unsaturated fats. So what they do is that they take the vegetable oil, yeah, which is liquid, and they add the hydrogen atoms to make it like semi-solid, so that these trans fats, they are in that way will be more stable, and they give good texture, good taste for the food that is being deep fried. So I assure you that all the fast food chain restaurants, even the restaurants that you go there, and if you order some deep fries or anything that has been really deep fried, they will be definitely using these trans fats. And these trans fats, they are the source for the bad cholesterol, which is the LDLs. Yeah. because they will be deposited in the arteries as a solid stuff. And why we tell that this is a risk factor for stroke and myocardial infarction is because once these plaques will rupture, they will just clog the arteries and the blood will not be able to pass through it. You see, so there will not be sufficient oxygen going to your brain tissue. So we really need to be alarmed about the use of these trans fats. So also margarine, it's a inexpensive source for pastries, and it can be, it has long shelf life, and it really cuts costs for the retailers and for the restaurants to supply the food that we have so much in our daily life. Okay, so let me quickly have a look at our chat. So what about thrombocytes? What element is hemoglobin cookies a source of? Yeah, the cookies, those which you buy from the like supermarkets, like in small, from Rahat company, they are all based on margarine. Like this is the trans fats. Thrombocytes, this is the thrombocytes. Actually, it's a cell type. It's a blood cell type. But I think in your case, you are calling about thrombosis, Arujan. This is what do you mean? Thrombosis is like when the artery cell wall, you have many of these LDL sitting, these plaques, and thrombosis, it means that you interrupted the flow of blood due to the clogging with this bad cholesterol. Why this food tastes good? This is the case of using these trans fats, because they have attractive features for the manufacturers. They can be done like in a way to sell it in very high amount, and they are cheap, they have good taste, because it's all artificially, industrially manufactured. Like for instance, why do you have good taste for juices that you drink? They are never natural, right? But the manufacturer food industry had invested so much money to make it for like really put artificial colorants, artificial sweeteners, and so on, so that it gives you the right taste, the right color, which is attractive, right? So once it's done, people use it like for a long time, and the manufacturer gains so much money from it. Of course, butter, the natural butter from the animal origin is really preferential, but it's if you go to the market, they are really expensive. However, it's better to use, like if you wake up in the morning, it's better to put the butter, natural butter, and cook your cookies, give it to your parents and kids rather than cooking them from margarine. However, one point is that this margarine, if you consume it on a daily basis and in big amounts, of course, they are very harmful. But if you consume it like, let's say, once per month, it's fine. So I meant erythrocytes have hemoglobin, and when there is low hemoglobin, we know what to eat. What about the case of thrombocytes? I see what you mean. You mean these thrombocytes, that is, so it's the cells, right? The blood cell type. I'm not quite sure what to answer for this. Let me think. By the end of the lecture, I will come up with an answer, okay?
Okay, thank you.
So here is our micronutrients. We have different fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, K. So this vitamin K is given straight away when the baby is born in the maternity house. And this D, you can also consume it, take it by droplets, or because we can never expose fully, you can never be exposed fully for 15 minutes, for the sunlight, and especially if you live in the Scandinavian countries, those people take this vitamin D on a regular basis, since the sun is very low amount there. Okay, so let's go further. And for trace minerals, I think we have already covered. And let's go quickly why we need these vitamins. These are organic compounds which participate in different biochemical functions like mineral metabolism, like vitamin K. It's involved in blood clotting, so that there won't be any bleeding, and almost they are participating in the antioxidant generation, so that it prevents the cell damage and anti-aging. Yes, so if you go to the cosmetic store, you will see that many creams contain vitamin E that acts as the antioxidant, so it would be good for our cells not to be aging but to sustain their life. Okay, and we have this huge vitamin B. So there is like a type of berry that's they are orange type. I know it in Russian, but I forgot how it's in English. It contains all the groups of vitamin B. Perhaps you know it's облепиха. Yeah. So if you consume it like in jam, you will get all these huge complex of vitamin B. And this vitamin B is good for energy production. So you will, once you can take them in the form of pills or from your berries, what you feel, you will be feeling like a boost of energy. It's all because they are involved in the production of ATP, be it through the electron transport chain, Krebs cycle, and so on. So now let's quickly stop why we need different vitamins. So vitamin C, it's we know it's from many long times, is that it's involved in sustaining our immune system. Even during this coronavirus, people were really buying from the pharmacies this vitamin C to boost their immune system. And also it helps in the absorption of iron, and it's good to synthesize the collagen. That is, collagen is abundant protein found in our skin, hair, teeth, bones, tendons, blood vessels. Yeah, so as you can see, it participates in different parts of our life. Regarding A and K, vitamin A, it's needed. We can consume plants that contains beta carotene. So every plant that has a coloration, yeah, like carrots, like pepper, which is the yellow pepper, yeah. So those, by the coloration, you can think of that it contains beta carotene. So if you consume it, you will get the right amount of vitamin E. Regarding the vitamin K, it prevents the blood bleeding, and green leafy vegetables in your salad will be a good source of it. And vitamin D, we get it from the sunlight, and also you can get it additionally from the fish oils, salmon. So as you can see, salmon is a very good source in for healthy diet in our daily life. It's a good source for unsaturated fatty acids. It's a good source for vitamin D, and it's really good to have all those vitamins, micro nutrients, minerals from this type of fish. And yes, and when the baby is growing, we need to make sure that he or she takes this vitamin D on a daily basis up to 1 year old, I think, in order to promote the bone growth. And nowadays, scientists have acknowledged that the vitamin D deficiency leads to many diseases, like both the hormonal deficiency, for skin aging. So it's a kind of core player in many that regulates many different parts. So vitamin D is really essential. Now let's talk about the minerals. So interestingly, when the animal licks the soil during eating the plant, that what happens is that this animal is automatically getting the minerals from the soil, all the salts, like sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, all those the animal is already getting from the soil. And when we eat the animal, we also get the part of these minerals through the consumption of that animal. Okay. And yeah, multivitamin tabs, you can also consume them during the springtime, yeah, in order to make sure that your immune system is working properly and you are in a good mood. Here is just a list of different macrominerals and their functions. So as you can see, you can get them from green leafy salads like celery, lettuce, and also from different fruits. In France, for instance, there is a philosophy of eating 5 fruits and 5 vegetables. All these are to make sure that you get the microminerals and microminerals in a good amount. And trace minerals that we talked, it's cuprum, iron, ferrum, zinc, selenium, and fluoride. Fluoride is good for your teeth. Again, we can give it to kids once they are growing, that they have a good condition of their teeth. And iodine is for the thyroid gland, but you need to be careful taking not too much iodine in order not to develop the hypothyroid and so. And lastly is water. Yeah, we cannot live without water. It's the main nutrient. We are made of from 72% of our body. It's water. Yeah. So if a muscle, even bone can consist of 22% of water. Brain consists of 90% of water. So you need to make sure that you drink at least seven or eight glasses of water per day. So please develop that good habit and you will feel that your body feels moisturized because it's a main nutrient. And yes, another very important function of it is that detoxifies. So we need to have it to regulate our body temperature. When the person has gotten cold, yeah, the doctor says, please drink as much water as possible, because we want to detoxify our body, yeah, from the viral particles that is being produced in our cells, and also to regulate the body temperature. And the fiber, it comes from the plant origin, and many people who want to lose weight, they consume this fiber, and you can also buy it from iHerb and other sources. And this is to mainly for the people who watch their weight, and it provides the feeling of fullness, actually. And also it's good in improvement the movement of food through the intestine. So basically it's good for the people who suffer from constipation and from diarrhea as well, to help them form a normal stool. Okay, now I think we are done with the nutrients and different types of their functions that they carry. And now let's move on how this food is getting digested, absorbed, yeah, and we will cover the enzymes as well. So the digestive system, it's a huge system that starts from the mouth, where we take the food, we chew it, we masticate it, yeah, and then the food goes through this hollow tube until it gets to the stomach. And in the stomach, it's a dilated, like a pouch. It's an organ that is involved in breaking down the food particles. So we have different tracts: upper gastrointestinal tract that involves mouth. This is the pharynx just behind the mouth, esophagus, yeah, and stomach, and duodenum. Duodenum, it means 12 fingers. These are called upper gastrointestinal tract. Lower gastrointestinal tract is all about intestine, small and large intestine. We will cover their functions as well. And we also have some helpers in the form of accessory organs. Those are tongue, yeah, it's a muscular organ, salivary glands, which secrete amylase enzyme to lubricate the food and to break down different carbohydrates, pancreas, which is just behind the stomach, which is involved in different enzyme production, insulin production. Liver is for close to the stomach, yeah, it contains glycogen, also detoxifies. And gallbladder, it's not seen from here, but it's this small thing, yeah, just on the bottom of the liver. And peristaltic contractions, it's like when the food goes through the intestine and you have this peristalsis going on. So it's the contractions. Whereas let's start with the upper gastrointestinal tract, which is the mouth. Yeah, it's an organ where we start our food consumption. So we need mouth to breathe, yeah, to communicate, and also to obtain. So this is the first channel of our food consumption. And then the food, once it's chewed and masticated, lubricated, and some carbohydrates are broken down by the saliva that are secreted by the salivary glands, it goes to the pharynx, yeah, to be swallowed. And esophagus, it's a tube, yeah, hollow tube where the chewed food goes to the stomach. So it's a kind of highway from taking the food from the mouth to the stomach. So this is the stomach. Actually, it has this structure of being dilated, and it's mainly involved in the breakdown of food. It contains enzymes like pepsin, different enzymes, and it has HCl. So how do you think, why we have HCl in the stomach? Hydrochloric acid. Yeah?
To break down the food?
Yes, stomach is for the breakage of the food, yeah. But what could be the name for like hydrochloric acid? Is to provide what kind of environment?
Acidic environment.
Yeah, very good. Acidic environment, which means that we will have a low pH. Yeah. Do you remember like Helicobacter pylori that lives in our stomach? Yeah, is able to kind of overcome this acidity in the stomach, so that you remember that Helicobacter pylori, it can break down urease, yeah, and as a result, it will have the accumulation of ammonium, and it will have its more neutral environment. So because Helicobacter can only live in neutral environment, it's neutrophiles, whereas in stomach you always have this acidic environment. And this acidic environment is, we need to have this acidic environment because we need to degrade, yeah, as you said, we have to make sure that we degrade and digest the food, yeah, degrade the food because it comes like in bulk, yeah, after being chewed, and now stomach needs to break down into smaller particles to be absorbed in the small intestine. And duodenum, here it's from the Latin, it's 12 fingers. It's just where the small intestine is beginning. We have this small part which is called duodenum. I will show it in another picture. And it's 38 centimeter long tube. Can you imagine? It's mainly responsible for the nutrients breakdown. And also it has a role in using different enzymes that come from the pancreas and also bile from the gallbladder to break down the food. So we have enzymes in the upper gastrointestinal tract like trypsin, which are for the proteins, break down into peptides and amino acids, then amylase. So everything like ACE, amylase, maltase, lactase, they're all enzymes which are involved in breaking down sugars. And lipase, those, as the name suggests, they are breaking down lipids, right? Oops. So let's talk about the lower gastrointestinal tract. So yeah, here is the duodenum. So here is your stomach. And then once the small intestine is starting, you have this duodenum. So lower gastrointestinal tract involves the small intestine, and small intestine is really responsible for the absorption of food. And we have here different breakdown of complex molecules, and the length of the small intestine goes to 10 meters. So you can imagine how tight is really packed, yeah, in our body. It's 10 meters if you just take it and wrap out. It's really long. And because they are well packed, tightly packed, and we have it up to 10 meters because we consume foods in so much time during our lives that they do the most of the job. And the small intestine has its parts like jejunum and ileum. Jejunum absorbs sugars, while ileum is vitamins and bile acids. So this is the large intestine, which is also belong to the lower gastrointestinal tract. It's mainly what it does. It's connected to the rectum, and so here you have the rectum, here the anus. So it's involved in the defecation. So it absorbs all the water coming from the food that is coming from the small intestine. Yeah. So in the small intestine, you had all the absorption going on. Once the food has been digested in the stomach, yeah. Now then it goes to go to the small intestine, where we take all the nutrients absorbed into the bloodstream, and they will be used as a monomers to renew the tissue or the cells, and all the unnecessary like waste, yeah, like the remaining ones will go through the large intestine to be defecated. So accessory organs, those are tongue, salivary glands, and pancreas. Tongue, it's an organ that is used for mastication, and it's also responsible for the food to be swallowed. We use it in speech, and also it's used in tasting chemicals and foods. Salivary glands, it's again in our mouth. It's an organ that produces saliva. And inside the saliva, you have amylase that breaks down the carbohydrates and starch. Okay. So pancreas, it's an organ just behind the stomach, which is really important, and in a way that it produces hormones and also the enzymes for digestion. Like we have trypsin, I think, which is also involved in the digestion of food. So accessory organs also is liver that detoxifies metabolites, which can be harmful for your body, and it also produces biochemicals for digestion. And you remember from the previous slide that it stores glycogen. Yeah, it's a carbohydrate storage in plants. You store energy, you store carbohydrates where? If in humans it's glycogen, in plants it will be very good, starch, yeah. Gallbladder, here you see, it's a very small, tiny organ that stores bile. Bile is produced from the liver, and it concentrates the bile before it gets released to the small intestine. Why we need bile is it helps us to digest fat. So those people who have the gallbladder removed, yeah, they need to follow very strict diets that will be very low in fat content, because now there is no gallbladder and it cannot release the bile into the small intestine to digest the fat. Okay. Oops. Now let's talk about the enzymatic breakdown of food particles. So you now have a clear idea of how food is digested from the mouth until it goes to the process of defecation. And along this movement, yeah, we have different enzymes which help the digestive tract to break down the food, to get the nutrients to be absorbed, because food on its own cannot be digested. We need to have organs, and we need to have different enzymes, which are the proteins. So right in the beginning, in mouth, we have this amylase. If you remember, starch is made from amylopectin, and those as ami suggest amylase. Yeah, it's a enzyme which breaks down starch into maltose. Maltose, it's a sugar. So in the stomach and small intestine, you have proteins degradation. First, proteins are degraded into peptides. So peptides, it's before the amino acid, you have peptides. Those are like 2 amino acids, right? And these peptides are degraded by proteases. So as the name suggests, it's breaking down proteins. And then you have peptidases, which break down peptides into amino acids. So these amino acids are then used to manufacture new proteins by the cell. Also, you have lipases to break down fatty acids into triglycerides. Structurally, if you remember, triglyceride is a glycerol linked to 3 molecules of alcohol. Yeah, we need triglycerides. Maltose, that is after the breakage of starch, you have this maltose. Yeah, maltose, it can be converted to glucose by maltase. Why it needs to be converted to glucose is because we need ATP generation, and ATP generation needs glucose to be broken down further. Okay, so glucose, it's a key starter for the ATP generation. So make sure that your starch is further broken down to maltose, then to glucose. And in duodenum, we have different breaking down of disaccharides. So we have sucrose, lactose, and maltose. And for their degradation, we use sucrase for sucrose breakdown, lactase for lactose, it's a milk sugar, and maltase for maltose generation, okay? And once we have these monosaccharides, we can use them for energy production. So for you, this is a quick picture of where you get these forms of nutrients in the form of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and what kind of enzymes are used for their degradation, and what you end up as a result of their degradation. So glucose for the carbohydrates breakdown, amino acids for the proteins breakdown, and fatty acids and glycerol. Yeah, that's results from the fats breakdown. And the last part of this presentation, we will talk about the nutrients-related diseases. It's a very big problem worldwide because what happens is that some people eat overwhelmingly, whereas we're not talking about here starvation. Yes, starvation is not a disease, but it's a condition. That's like in some African countries get it. But here we're talking about eating disorders. And these eating disorders affects our health entirely. And in the US, could you imagine the government spends $147 billion to combat the problem of obesity and overweight? It's a really huge problem. So if you've been to the US, you would see that in the streets, by walking in the streets, that the nation is really suffering from these eating disorders. And why it's a problem? Because it's a risk factor for developing heart diseases, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and cancer. So interestingly, overweight, these nutritional diseases are associated with certain types of cancer, colorectal, yeah, because it's the digestive system, and in postmenopausal women who can have breast and uterine cancer. So also, if the woman who is pregnant will have very low levels of iron, there is a possibility that the baby can get very bad mental abilities. So now let's talk about the psychological illnesses that is also, I think, prevalent in Hollywood stars. So the anorexia nervosa is mostly visible in people who are very, very thin. So in the picture you can see it, that this is also a problem in early teenagers, in a way that they look into the mirror and they see themselves very fat. And what happens is that everything that they eat, they vomit straight after. or they start to exercise very harshly, and they take laxatives and diuretics, and these all affect their health and physical appearance in being very, very thin. And bulimia is another type of psychological illness and even psychiatric illness that's characterized by the person who eats large amount of food, and even if he is large amount of food, and then in a very short period of time. And then what happens is that, again, they induce vomiting themselves, they start to over exercise and fast. So what is the difference between anorexic people is that these bulimic patients, they have normal body weight. And they can be undetected or underdiagnosed with eating disorder by healthcare people. So these people, like, they also have the starvation reaction. It's a syndrome that they will eat food only with high fat and high sugar content without any control, and they will compensate it with exercise cycle. So this is something like being guilty of having eaten so much food and fat, and they go to the to the gym just to exercise without any limit. The third one is binge eating disorder. Binge eating, it's like eating a lot, even when they are full. So they do not have a control over their eating. And difference between the anorexic and bulimic people is that they do not compensate of having eaten a lot. So they don't do any physical exercising, they do not do any strict dieting or fasting after having eaten after having eaten that. So what's now is going on is that many call centers are available for people with these syndromes. In the US especially, psychotherapy sessions are given by telephone. Yeah, so now in the kindergartens, nutritional program has been developed so that kids have the right amount of nutrients, vitamins since the very first their habit of eating, so that they have it for the rest of their lives. And in offices, there are more healthy food options. Like in our university, if you remember, we had this health product, yeah, that it was really good in having those fresh stuff, and also so make sure that you have the right consumption of sodium, fat, and sugar, because in restaurant foods you have lots of sodium containing, and they come processed, deep fried with trans fats. I'm not telling that you should not go and don't eat in fast food chain restaurants, but you should be aware of use of these nutrients that your body might then suffer. So that's it for today. I think it was quite a long lecture. So I think I'll go to your questions. So you can also free to turn on your mic, yeah? Oh, great. I think where I have stopped. Arjan, regarding your thrombocytes, I think you, if the person has low level of thrombocyte, I think he needs to drink lots of water. This is from what I remember from my readings. I will also check it, but from what I remember, it's that if he or she has lower in the range. So bake yourself. Yeah, I also like baking myself with my family, and I really use the trans fat. And I want to tell that regarding if you want to get the sun only for consuming vitamin D, to be honest, your skin is not directly exposed, yeah, because you wear clothes, you wear some stuff on it, so your skin is not 100% exposed to the sun. So even in that case, you won't get, for instance, in Sultan City, we have lots of sun, but we do not get 100% of vitamin D from the sun, because in order to do that, like in ideal situation, you shouldn't have any, like as less as possible the clothes, because it also acts as a barrier for the sun to come into our body. Allergic to sunlight, you mean for those people who have like how it can be, I mean, allergic to sunlight because they get red, yeah, or they have this pigmentation going on. There are some creams that you can apply, like anti-pigmentation creams and so on, but still they will be also like barriers for the sunlight to get in. Yeah, skin cancer can cause, so therefore you need to use these SPF creams that are protective creams. Yep, okay, yeah, already Shnar answered it. People don't need to be thin to suffer from anorexia. It's all about that's true. I completely agree. It's all about our mindset. So the consciousness, some complexes that people develop by looking at very thin like models and Hollywood stars, yeah. So we need to be really sure once we bringing up our daughters, our sisters, and it's not the ideal like figure that those people have. We need to have a healthy mindset. That is the key point. Very good. Who I never breastfed, no problem at all, because in the like Nutrilon and all those brand names, that's how we call them, artificial nutrients, or because it's already integrated into those powders, so there is no problem at all. If you look in on the contents, you'll see there are ferrum, zinc, everything is integrated, because before they are out, they need to be regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. Yes, guys, so I was not able to record the lecture in advance, so I will post, I am recording it, so I will post it on YouTube, okay? No problem with that, and the lecture slides as well. Regarding the quizzes, it will be for you available tomorrow morning, so I will make sure that it's available so that you can open it and go back to your answers. Okay, guys, I think if you have any questions, please feel free to address.
Sorry, will the next lectures will be recorded this way, or is it only this lecture?
I think I will try to record them as usual. Okay, for this it just took me some time for the slide preparation, so I was not able to do that on time. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.